Honduras, officially the Republic of Honduras, is a republic in Central America. It was at times referred to as Spanish Honduras to differentiate it from British Honduras, which became the modern-day state of Belize. Honduras is bordered to the west by Guatemala, to the southwest by El Salvador, to the southeast by Nicaragua, to the south by the Pacific Ocean at the Gulf of Fonseca, and to the north by the Gulf of Honduras, a large inlet of the Caribbean Sea. Honduras was home to several important Mesoamerican cultures, most notably the Maya, prior to being conquered by Spain in the 16th century. The Spanish introduced Roman Catholicism and the now predominant Spanish language, along with numerous customs that have blended with the indigenous culture. Honduras became independent in 1821 and has since been a republic, although it has consistently endured much social strife and political instability, remaining one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. Honduras has the highest murder rate in the world. Honduras spans an area of about 112,492 square kilometers and has a population exceeding 8 million. Its northern portions are part of the Western Caribbean zone, as reflected in the area's demographics and culture. Honduras is known for its rich natural resources, including various minerals, coffee, tropical fruit, and sugarcane, as well as for its growing textiles industry, which serves the international market. Etymology: Honduras literally means depths in Spanish. The name could either refer to the Bay of Trujillo as an anchorage, Fondura in the Leonese dialect of Spanish, or to Columbus's alleged quote that, "Gracias a Dios que hemos salido de esas Honduras." It was not until the end of the 16th century that Honduras was used for the whole province, and prior to 1580, Honduras only referred to the eastern part of the province, and Higueras referred to the western part. Another early name is Guaymuras, revived as the name for the political dialogue in 2009 that took place in Honduras as opposed to Costa Rica. History: Pre-colonial period. In pre-Columbian times, modern Honduras was part of the Mesoamerican cultural area. In the west, the Maya civilization flourished for hundreds of years. The dominant state within Honduras's borders was that based in Copan. Copan fell with the other lowland centers during the conflagrations of the Terminal Classic during the 9th century. The mayor of this civilization survive in western Honduras as the Chorta, isolated from their Coltian linguistic peers to the west. Remains of other pre-Columbian cultures are found throughout the country. Archaeologists have studied sites such as Naco and La Sierra in the Naco Valley, Los Naranjos on Lake Yoja, Yaramela in the Comayagua Valley, La Ceiba and Salatron Viejo, Salin Farm in Cuamel in the Aguan Valley, Cerro Palenque, Travesía, Curras, Ticamaya, Despeloncal in the lower Ulua River Valley, and many others. Spanish conquest. On his fourth and the final voyage to the New World in 1502, Christopher Columbus landed near the modern town of Trujillo, in the vicinity of the Guaymareto Lagoon, and became the first European to visit the Bay Islands on the coast of Honduras. On 30 July 1502, Columbus sent his brother Bartholomew to explore the islands, and Bartholomew encountered a Mayan trading vessel from Yucatan, carrying well-dressed Maya and a rich cargo. Bartholomew's men stole whatever cargo they wanted and kidnapped the ship's elderly captain to serve as an interpreter in what was the first recorded encounter between the Spanish and the Maya. In March 1524, Gil González de Villa became the first Spaniard to enter Honduras as a conquistador, followed by Hernán Cortés, bringing forces down from Mexico. Much of the conquest was done in the following 2 decades, first by groups loyal to Cristobal de Olid, and then by those loyal of Francisco Montejo, but most particularly by those following Alvarado. In addition to Spanish resources, the conquerors relied heavily on armed forces from Mexico, Tlaxcalans and Mexican armies of thousands who lived on in the region as garrisons. Resistance to conquest was led in particular by La Empira, and many regions in the north never fell to the Spanish, notably the Mosquito Kingdom. After the Spanish conquest, Honduras became part of Spain's vast empire in the New World within the Kingdom of Guatemala. Trujillo and Gracias were the first city capitals. The Spanish ruled the region for approximately 3 centuries. Spanish Honduras was organized as a province of the Kingdom of Guatemala, and the capital was fixed, first at Trujillo on the Atlantic coast, and later at Ágora, and finally at Tegucigalpa in the central part of the country. Silver mining was a key factor in the Spanish conquest and settlement of Honduras. Initially the mines were worked by local people through the encomienda system, but as disease and resistance made this less available, slaves from other parts of Central America were brought in, and following the end of the local slave trading period at the end of the 16th century, African slaves, mostly from Angola, were obtained. After about 1650, very few slaves or other outside workers arrived in Honduras. They managed to found a few towns along the coast, at Puerto Cabelos and Trujillo in particular, but failed to conquer the eastern portion of the region and many pockets of independent indigenous people as well. The Mosquito Kingdom, located in the northeast, was particularly effective in resisting conquest. The Mosquitos in turn found support from northern European privateers, pirates, and especially the British colony of Jamaica, which placed much of it under their protection after 1740. Independence. Honduras became independent from Spain in 1821 and was for a time part of the First Mexican Empire until 1823, when it became part of the United Provinces of Central America Federation. After 1838 it was an independent republic and held regular elections. Ágora was the capital of Honduras until 1880, when it was transferred to Tegucigalpa. In the decades of 1840 and 1850, Honduras participated in several failed attempts to restore Central American unity, such as the Confederation of Central America, the Covenant of Guatemala, the Diet of Sons and Eight, the Diet of Nacarome, and national representation in Central America. Although Honduras eventually adopted the name Republic of Honduras, the unionist ideal never waned, and Honduras was one of the Central American countries that pushed hardest for the policy of regional unity. Since independence, nearly 300 small internal rebellions and civil wars have occurred in the country, including some changes of government. Neoliberal policies favoring international trade and investment began in the 1870s, and soon foreign interests became involved, first in shipping, especially tropical fruit from the north coast, and then in railway building. In 1888, a projected railroad line from the Caribbean coast to the capital, Tegucigalpa, ran out of money when it reached San Pedro Sula, resulting in its growth into the nation's main industrial center and second largest city. 20th century and the late 19th century, United States-based infrastructure and fruit-growing companies were granted substantial land and exemptions to develop the northern regions. As a result, thousands of workers came to the north coast to work in the banana plantations and the other industries that grew up around the export industry. The banana exporting companies, dominated by QML Fruit Company, United Fruit Company, and Standard Fruit Company, built an enclave economy in northern Honduras, controlling infrastructure and creating self-sufficient, tax-exempt sectors that contributed relatively little to economic growth. Honduras saw insertion of American troops in 1903, 1907, 1911, 1912, 1919, 1924 and 1925, and in 1904 writer O. Henry coined the term "Banana Republic" to describe Honduras. In addition to drawing many Central American workers to the north, the fruit companies also encouraged immigration of workers from the English-speaking Caribbean, notably Jamaica and Belize. who introduced an African-descended, English-speaking and largely Protestant population into the country. Though many left after changes in the immigration law in 1939. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Honduras joined the Allied nations on 8 December 1941. Along with 25 other governments, Honduras signed the Declaration by United Nations on 1 January 1942. Constitutional crises in the 1940s led to reforms in the 1950s, and as a result of one such reform, workers were given permission to organize. In 1963, a military coup was mounted against the democratically elected President Ramón Vilda Morales. In 1969, Honduras and El Salvador fought what would become known as the Football War. There had been border tensions between the two countries after Oswaldo López Arellano, a former president of Honduras, blamed the deteriorating economy on the large number of immigrants from El Salvador. From that point on, the relationship between the two neighbors grew acrimonious and reached a low when El Salvador met Honduras for a three-round football elimination match as a preliminary to the World Cup. Tensions escalated, and on 14 July 1969, the Salvadoran army launched an attack on the Honduran army. The Organization of American States negotiated a ceasefire which took effect on 20 July and brought about a withdrawal of Salvadoran troops in early August. Contributing factors to the conflict were a boundary dispute and the presence of thousands of Salvadorans living in Honduras illegally. After the week-long war, as many as 130,000 Salvadoran immigrants were expelled. Hurricane Fifi caused severe damage while skimming the northern coast of Honduras on 18 and 19 September 1974. Melgar Castro and Paz Garcia largely built the current physical infrastructure and telecommunications system of Honduras. In 1979, the country returned to civilian rule. A constituent assembly was popularly elected in April 1980, and general elections were held in November 1981. A new constitution was approved in 1982, and the government of Roberto Suazo assumed power. Roberto Suazo won the elections with a promise to carry out an ambitious program of economic and social development in Honduras in order to tackle the country's recession. President Roberto Suazo Córdoba launched ambitious social and economic development projects, sponsored by American development aid. Honduras became host to the largest Peace Corps mission in the world, and non-governmental and international voluntary agencies proliferated. During the early 1980s, the United States established a continuing military presence in Honduras with the purpose of supporting U.S. government support to El Salvador, the Contra guerrillas fighting the Nicaraguan government, and also developed an airstrip and a modern port in Honduras, though spared the bloody civil wars racking its neighbors. The Honduran army quietly waged a campaign against Marxist-Leninist militias such as Cinchoneros Popular Liberation Movement, notorious for kidnappings and bombings, and many non-militants. The operation included a CIA-backed campaign of extrajudicial killings by government-backed units, most notably Battalion 316. In 1998, Hurricane Mitch caused such massive and widespread destruction that former Honduran President Carlos Roberto Flores claimed that 50 years of progress in the country had been reversed. Mitch destroyed about 70% of the crops and an estimated 70 to 80% of the transportation infrastructure, including nearly all bridges and secondary roads. Across the country, 33,000 houses were destroyed, an additional 50,000 damaged, some 5,000 people killed, 12,000 more injured, for a total loss estimated at $3 billion USD. 21st century. The 2008 Honduran floods were severe and around half the country's roads were damaged or destroyed as a result. In 2009, a constitutional crisis culminated in a transfer of power from the president to the head of Congress. Countries all over the world, the OAS, and the UN formally and unanimously condemned the action as a coup d'état and refused to recognize the de facto government. Their document submitted to the United States Congress declared the coup to be legal according to the opinion of the lawyers consulted by the Library of Congress. The Honduran Supreme Court ruled the proceedings to be legal. The government that followed, the de facto government, set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Comisión de la Verdad y Reconciliación, which after more than a year of research and debate concluded the ousting to be a coup d'état to the executive power, illegal in their opinion. Geography. Honduras borders the Caribbean Sea on the north coast and the Pacific Ocean on the south through the Gulf of Fonseca. Honduras consists mainly of mountains, with narrow plains along the coasts, a large undeveloped lowland jungle La Mosquitia region in the northeast, and the heavily populated lowland Sula Valley in the northwest. In La Mosquitia lies the UNESCO World Heritage Site Rio Platano Biosphere Reserve, with the Coco River which divides Honduras from Nicaragua. The Islas de la Bahia and the Swan Islands are off the north coast. Misteriosa Bank and Rosario Bank, 130 to 150 kilometers north of the Swan Islands, fall within the EEZ of Honduras. Natural resources include timber, gold, silver, copper, lead, zinc, iron ore, antimony, coal, fish, shrimp, and hydropower. Climate. The climate varies from tropical in the lowlands to temperate in the mountains. The central and southern regions are relatively hotter and less humid than the northern coast. Ecology. The region is considered a biodiversity hotspot because of the numerous plant and animal species that can be found there. Like other countries in the region, Honduras contains vast biological resources. Honduras hosts more than 6,000 species of vascular plants, of which 630 are orchids, around 250 reptiles and amphibians, more than 700 bird species, and 110 mammal species, half of them being bats. In the northeastern region of La Mosquitia lies the Rio Platano Biosphere Reserve, a lowland rainforest which is home to a great diversity of life. The reserve was added to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites list in 1982. In the Bay Islands there are bottlenose dolphins, manta rays, parrotfish, schools of blue tang and whale shark. Environmental issues. Deforestation resulting from logging is especially rampant in Olancho Department. The clearing of land for agriculture is especially prevalent in the largely undeveloped La Mosquitia region, causing land degradation and soil erosion. Mining activities pollute Lake Yojoa with heavy metals, which is Honduras' largest source of fresh water. Some rivers and streams are also polluted by mining. Government and politics. Honduras is governed within a framework of a presidential representative democratic republic. The President of Honduras is both head of state and head of government. Executive power is exercised by the Honduran government. Legislative power is vested in the National Congress of Honduras. The judiciary is independent of the executive and the legislature. The National Congress of Honduras has 128 members, elected for a 4-year term by proportional representation. Congressional seats are assigned the party's candidates on a departmental basis in proportion to the number of votes each party receives. Political culture. In 1963 a military coup was mounted against the democratically elected President Ramón Vilda Morales. This event started a string of military governments which held power almost uninterrupted until 1981. When Suazo Cordova was elected president and Honduras changed from a military authoritarian regime. Today, the party system is dominated by the Conservative National Party of Honduras and the Liberal Party of Honduras. Since 1981 Honduras has had 6 Liberal Party presidents. Roberto Suazo Cordova, José Azcona del Hoyo, Carlos Roberto Reina, Carlos Roberto Flores, Manuel Zelaya and Roberto Micheletti, and 3 National Party presidents, Rafael Leonardo Colegius Romero, Ricardo Maduro and Porfirio Lobo Sosa. The current Honduras president is Porfirio Lobo. Foreign relations: Honduras and Nicaragua had tense relations throughout 2000 and early 2001 due to a boundary dispute off the Atlantic coast. Nicaragua imposed a 35% tariff against Honduras due to the dispute. In June 2009, Honduran President Manuel Zelaya was ousted in a coup d'état and taken to neighboring Costa Rica. Like several other Latin American nations, Mexico temporarily severed diplomatic relations with Honduras. In July 2010, full diplomatic relations were once again re-established. The United States maintains a small presence at a Honduran military base. The 2 countries conduct joint peacekeeping, counter-narcotics, humanitarian, disaster relief, and civic action exercises. U.S. troops conduct and provide logistics support for a variety of bilateral and multilateral exercises, medical, engineering, peacekeeping, counter-narcotics, and disaster relief. The United States is Honduras' chief trading partner. Military: Honduras has a modest military with Western equipment. Administrative divisions: Honduras is divided into 18 departments. The capital city is Tegucigalpa in the Central District within the Department of Francisco Morazan. Atlantidi, Coluteca, Colon, Comayagua, Copan, Cortes, El Bruizu, Francisco Morazan, Gracias a Dios, Intibuca, Islas de la Bahia, La Paz, Lempira, Acotepec, Olancho, Santa Barbara, Vail, Lloro,